Hello every pony, bronies and Pegasisters of all ages. Welcome once again to Like a Ditzy Do, a video blog about the My Alone Pony collectible card game. I am your host, the Nate Damn Z, and I'm wearing my fancy blazer. You know what that means. Actually, you have no way of knowing what that means, because I only wore it once, said it was my new look, and then never wore it again. And that was a year ago. So basically what I've decided that the blazer means is that there's some new hotness for this little game of ours, and I'm going to offer something of a review for it. Set 8, Defenders of Equestria, has had its pre-release events and should hopefully be showing up at brick-and-mortar stores soon. As such, an updated version of the comprehensive rules document has been released, and the entirety of the set is available to read on the MLP CCG Wiki. I've read through the whole thing twice now, plus a few more bits here and there as research for this episode. And boy do I have some thoughts. Let's dig in. New mechanics seem like a good place to start, and Defenders of Equestria offers us two new keywords, Experienced and Redeem. Experienced says, this card has +1 power for each card with the same name as this card in your discard pile. Now, the most important thing to note here is that the same name means title and subtitle. That means the card has +1 for every copy of the exact same card in the discard pile. So the most you're going to get is a +2 bonus. Now, that said, what's really cool is that a lot of the cards with this new keyword have an additional mechanic that encourages you to discard it and hopefully get the bonus. Heck, some of them let you outright retire them, or increase the odds of you discarding one. It's a really fun idea that I'm willing to bet you can build some decent strategy around. At least for casual play. My only real complaint here is that I wish the rules team had been a little more precise with the language. Instead of each card with the same name, I think something like each copy of this card would have been better and cleared up the initial confusion. I understand why they wanted to specify both title and subtitle though. With as many cards as Discord has by now, Captain Was Here would overpower the Doctor's experienced equine before you could blink. Heck, if they went with just title, that would have included Troublemakers, and Discord has 3 of those. Moving on to Redeem. It's almost kind of an opposite to an Experienced. As an additional cost to play this card, you may retire a friend or troublemaker with the same title. If you do, this card's cost is reduced by 3. First, note that it says title rather than name. So going back to my Discord example, yes, this would include his troublemakers as well as his friends. Second, it says may retire. So if you don't have any other Trixies, Starlight, or Discords in play, you could still play the card. You just have to pay that full, rather steep action token cost. And yeah, holy crap, these cards are expensive action token wise. 2 of the 3 cost 7, and the third costs 8. That said, they're all worth playing even at full price. Especially Starlight. My love for the character may be making me slightly biased here, but the ability to get a friend in play each turn for practically free is pretty darn good. Though, once again, I feel the need for cleaner language. I really think they should have just specified 1 friend or troublemaker instead of going with the more generic A. This may be nitpicking, but it's my personal philosophy that rules language needs to be as precise as possible to try to avoid confusion and possible abuse. As written, I went onto the official MLP CCG Rules Facebook group for clarification before writing this part of my script, just to be sure, because as written, I don't see why it wouldn't allow you to retire a friend or a troublemaker at a time. I could easily see it being interpreted both ways, so specifically stating one would have been the better option, in my opinion. Of course, I'm not a game designer, so there may be some reason for writing it this way that I'm just not seeing. Another nitpick would be that there are only 3 friends with this keyword, and all of them are ultra rares. Granted, these are probably the 3 characters where the literal meaning of redeem best intersects with thematic game mechanics. Still, a not ultra rare card with this keyword would have been nice, if for no other reason that there would be a card that has the corresponding game text actually printed on it. I had to go to the wiki to copy-paste it for my script. The Discord one even has the game text for hasty, so why not include the rest of the important text? In any case, that about does it for new mechanics. Let's take a look at some of the more general stuff, such as the new main. Thorax, the Changed Changeling, is our ultra rare main for this set. And just like the new mains for the main 6, he has the standard confront problem to flip, so we can just talk about the good stuff. Namely, how he may be the most broken main since Mod Pie Destroyer of Worlds. This card has +1 power for each of your friends with 2 or less printed power. Enterplay, you do realize how easy it is to swarm in yellow, right? Since day 1, even before the token mechanic, getting a bunch of low-level friends on the field has always been what yellow does best. And note how it specifies printed power. That means it doesn't matter what you do to boost those friends. As long as the card itself doesn't physically change, Thorax still gets the boost. Play all the fast foods and beast bulk ups you want. Thorax will still easily hit the double digits before you know it. As clueless as I can be about competitive play, even I know that this guy will be all over the tournament scene. Personally, I can't wait to pull a copy so I can make a deck around him. Forest Owl will be his new bestie. As we move on to friends, I just want to say that I'm really disappointed that we did not get a Gabby main. Not only would she have been perfect to bring pink back to equal numbers with the rest of the colors, but she would have been a great secret rare. I'm actually surprised by how disappointed I was to learn that this is the first set since Canterlot Knights not to have at least one of those. Not that I want to disparage her friend card at all. Gabby's pretty great. In fact, she's close to what I consider a perfect card. Cost equal to power, low requirement, very helpful ability, but do you know what is most important to my standard for perfection? I know what this card is supposed to represent in terms of flavor. Gabby's episode was all about how helpful and kind she is. And what's more helpful in the context of the game than always making sure you have cards to play? As much as I love this game, there are so many cards where I find myself thinking, what from the show is this supposed to represent exactly? What does this ability have to do with this character? What I like most about Gabby is that I can tell immediately, and that it fits everything about her so well, like a velvet glove. Speaking of digits, Gabby gets bonus points for having delightful flavor text. The idea that ponies would basically be in awe about being able to count past 1 while using their limbs is not only adorable, but makes so much sense. If they had found a way to naturally mention Lyra, this card would probably be my favorite card in the set. Speaking of flavor text, I was going to try to not talk about any of the cards that were spoiled before the set's release, but I have to talk about the flavor text on Sir McBiggin here. Halt, vile interloper! With yon blade, evil's bane, the courageous Sir McBiggin shall split thee in twain. What Sir McBiggin sounds like in Big Mac's head. This. So much this. As a Pathfinder player of almost 8 years now, I can't tell you how many times I've had a character's personalities decided on mentally, only for them to be nothing like I had envisioned when I opened my mouth to roleplay them. It's one of those things I found to be equal parts amusing and frustrating. I could go on and explain further, but I'm already skirting the line between on and off topic. Going back fully to the on-topic side of things, I want to talk about my new favorite critter, the Trihorn Bunyip. One of the things I forgot to mention in my Set 8 wishlist episode was that I was hoping to see this adorable thing as both a friend and a troublemaker. While the troublemaker didn't happen, I'm fine with that, as friend makes the most sense between the two, and this card just looks really solid and fun. Low power, but matching cost, and the kind of high requirement balances out a really strong set of abilities. I definitely want some to go in my critter-themed decks, and probably to partner with Thorax, too. The next ultra-rare friend I want to talk about is Ember, up to the challenge. First, I don't know why blue didn't immediately come to mind when I was speculating on her color. Second, she is darn good and fits blue's being really good at face-off gimmick wonderfully. Almost too wonderfully, and I hope she doesn't get banned. The last specific friend I really want to talk about is the new Wildfire, though it really has nothing to do with the card's mechanics. They're solid, don't get me wrong, but what really stands out is the art. This is the first official card we've gotten that breaks the style of, at least it looks like it was pulled from the show, and is clearly drawn by some pony else. I'm honestly not sure how I feel about this. Taken on its own, there's nothing objectively wrong with the picture. Subjectively, I think it looks pretty cool. And when you remember that the character of Wildfire is actually the pony Sona of one of the show's storyboard artists, it makes sense that this would be the character to break the trend. All that said, I can't help but find it really jarring. And that's just looking at the cards online. I'm pretty sure this will mess with my head once I start collecting the cards and putting them in my binder. How do you guys feel about having clearly not from the show art on cards? I'm not done talking about friends entirely yet, though. One of the things this set did was introduce a bunch of friend cards that represented more than 2 characters, and as such had names that are not just character X and character Y. While I don't think this offers really anything new or interesting mechanically, in terms of flavor, I just think it's really neat. I really like that not all of these team friends are multicolor, making them far easier to play. It also makes me nostalgic for when Overpower introduced the idea of team characters in its Monumental expansion, which is one of my favorite things that game did. Now, there are still plenty of really good friends in this set. These are just the ones that stood out to me the most for one reason or another. So, let's move on. I'm batching the remaining card types together because my thoughts on them are more general There are very few specific cards that I want to talk about, but still want to talk about themes and cycles and the like. Such as most colors getting an event with the sentence, as an additional cost to play this card, discard 2 cards. It's a really neat idea, especially considering that some of them have an action token cost of 0, meaning you can still play a really useful card even when you're low on resources. That said, with the ones that don't have the cost of 0, is the additional cost really necessary? I am not an expert on game balance by any means, but from where I sit, the action token cost seems reasonable for what the card does. Either way, another thing that makes these cards interesting to me is that most colors got a friend that has an ability that takes effect if you have a certain number of cards or less in your hand. It's just a nice little thing that helps take the sting off having to get rid of some of your cards, even if it is for a really nice benefit. I also really like that they've introduced monocolor song cards. And there are a hoofful of events that are not only pretty good on their own, but I can't help but think maybe they were designed to make some older mains more viable? Moving on to resources, I have to say that I think Defenders of Equestria has a better selection than offered by Marks in Time. Not only does it have more resources that make me go, whoa, cool, but there are also more common and uncommons to choose from, making deck building a little easier. This set also gives us a couple of new dilemmas. Literally a couple. There are only 2 new ones, and while I'm still figuring out how I feel about the concept as a whole, I'd say one is meh, while the other makes me want to love this idea and put it in all of my blue decks. Though while working on this episode, I think I figured out why I'm so lukewarm on dilemmas. As I mentioned in one of my booster box unwrapping videos, when I teach the game to my friends, I've developed the habit of not teaching the double face-off rules. The reasons for doing this are explained in the video, but because of this habit, I tend to forget that DFOs are a thing, and therefore overlook something that either plays off them, or, in this case, makes them more viable. See, with the introduction of dilemmas, we were also introduced to the idea of the multi-problem face-off, or fracas. Needless to say, this adds a whole new dimension of play to the game that I haven't really given the proper amount of thought to. I have a feeling that when I finally do, it will get an episode of its own to talk about. If nothing else, I'm curious as to how viable a fracas would make fire when ready. Oh, and I'm wondering if Changeling Throne might be broken. But even if it is, I want at least one for my Queen Chrissy deck. Now that we're on to troublemakers, can I just say that it feels like the ones in this set were made especially for me? A non-ultra rare villain, most of them offer 0 bonus points, and even the one that's not a villain and does offer a bonus point is well worth the risk. If I ever do a top 10 troublemakers video or the like, there's a good chance most of them will be from this set. 13 out of 10 we'll play with. And finally, problems. The problems in this set are fine. There's 1 or 2 that I find more interesting than most, but overall they just struck me as standard fare. Which actually I'm okay with. More options to choose from means it's less likely for my decks to feel repetitive. I named this episode Defending the Defenders for 2 reasons. One was just an attempt at clever wordplay and an interesting sounding name, but the other is that I felt I needed to defend this set. Shortly after the pre-release, I was scrolling through Facebook, and one of the first things I saw was a post in one of the MLP CCG groups that I'm in, declaring what a disappointment the set was, and I just don't feel that's fair. And yes, I know, to quote a much more popular YouTuber than I, if you don't cry or rage, the internet dies. And yes, that poster is entitled to their opinion. But to just dismiss the entire set outright is just wrong in my opinion. There are a lot of really solid options in this set, and I feel it at least meets the bar set for the game by Equestrian Odysseys. My only real complaint would be that it doesn't do anything with traits when there are so many new cards that have multiples, including the set's literal title card. That just seems like wasted potential to me. That said, I still think this set was better than High Magic, which, while writing the script for this episode, I had to constantly remind myself exists. But, what about you folks? What are your thoughts on the set? Are you also disappointed that Gabby wasn't a new pink main? Are you as relieved as I am to learn that it won't be another year between sets? Feel free to let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe. What? That's my 2-year anniversary. I'm allowed to beg at least once. Until next time, I am the Nate DMZ, and I'm gonna bust my flank to try to get my next episode up while I still have an anniversary month. Like a Ditzy do.